Well, we're back, rudely interrupted by some technological glitch. You know, in this modern age, we have all of these connections, supposedly faster than the speed of light, etc. But Butch Pichai speaks faster than the speed of light, really. I mean, so we
That's
speak.
that's normal in our country. Like for example, when it comes to drop calls on cell phones, the reason behind is that there are a few cell sites. Dapat kasi we should have at least 100,000 cell site for 60 million subscribers. And both Smart and Globe, they have 60 million subscribers. They should have 100,000 cell sites, but they only have 30.
Imagine that. Nag-aaway-aaway pa.
Short change tayo, short change.
Nag-aaway-aaway pa.
But anyway, going back, as I said earlier, 35% is the tariff.
Okay.
So when you import rice, we have this rice tarification law. 35% is actually charged for every importer. So that constitute 1/3 of the price of rice. So ang kinakain natin ay actually not only the actual rice but 30% tariff.
Tariff.
Diba? Pag tinanggal mo yung tariff, nasa 40 plus lang, 40 to 40 plus. But I'm not saying that to remove it completely, but to temporarily, what do you call this? Temporarily remove the tariff. Para naman nang sa ganun ay lahat tayo mga kababayan, lahat ng ating mga kababayan ay makikinabang. You know, the reason why they impose tariff is because they want to protect the farmers. But how many years na, more than 10 years na, hindi naman bumababa yung ating yung ating impression ng bigas, tumataas, at hindi naman tayo nagiging self-sufficient. So I think it's about time we revisit and restudy that rice tarification law. Nakakaganda ba sa ating mga farmers o hindi?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because yung income din dyan is also going to be utilized supposedly for the farmers. But here we are with farmers, for instance, like there was this big affair, Butch, na nagkaroon ng emancipation of those farmers na may mga utang, yung sa land reform, etc. Yan land reform na yan, tagal na yan, 1970s pa. That's supposed to improve our rice or whatever is being planted sa mga kabukiran. But it has not, as you said, it really has not given us agricultural productivity. Saan ba talaga ang problema dyan? It seems to be, well, sabi simple lang, bigyan ng tulong ang mga farmers, but it still doesn't work that way.
Because at the end of the day, the input is expensive. And then I think we have to change our method of farming. It is really wrong to say that rice will always be planted where there is water. Rice is not an aquatic plant. You treat it just like any ordinary plant. So kailangan mo rin i-cultivate yan para nang sa ganun ay papasok yung oxygen. And then gaganda yung yung tawag nito, photosynthesis.
It's still is 60% water. In spite of all the input, it's still is 60% water. But here we are at this particular stage, Butch. Sabi mo nga sa input, just the other day, the president launched, I just did not have the name of that equipment. Pero meron siyang ni-launch which is supposed to be part of the agricultural productivity program, yung maghuhukay for irrigation. Precisely.
And these are backhoes. Backhoes.
Backhoe ba yun? Pero malalaki.
Yeah, mga backhoes yan para gagawa ng canals. You know, like if you have a source of water there, to bring it to the farms, kailangan mo ng canals. But offhand, I would say that is an old technology. Kailangan just like MWSS delivering water, kailangan pipes na ang gagamitin natin. And then may mga bulbs yan. For every farmer, kailangan may bulbs para walang masyadong wastage. At saka hindi naman kasi dapat nakalubog yung ating tubig. Ang magandang irrigation sa rice is drip irrigation. That is popularized by Israel actually. Yung drip irrigation, parang, if you go to the golf courses, di ba may umiikot na tubig dyan to water the lawn. Ayun ang drip irrigation. So hindi po pwedeng nakalubog ang ating mga rice plants.
So that
Kasi
is
kung nakalubog yung ating mga rice plants, then it will deprive them of photosynthesis, and then hindi ang technology kasi, Rita, ngayon urea ang nagbibigay ng nitrogen sa rice. These are inorganic fertilizer. Pero hindi mo naman kailangan talaga yan kasi the atmosphere has 78% nitrogen. And if you cultivate the land and then papasok doon yung oxygen and yung mga microorganism, sila yung receiver ng nitrogen. And then itong mga microorganism, sila ang maglilipat niyan sa tanim, sa halaman. So that's why I'm saying let us not use urea because urea is acidic. I asked Secretary Solidom, alam mo naman scientist yon. So what is the difference between the effect of an inorganic urea and an organic urea? Sabi niya, pareho yan, urea. So what I'm saying here is, kung ang constant use ng urea will make our soil acidic, then it will kill all the microorganism. Hindi kailangan buhay yung microorganism. Kaya when guano was discovered by I think the Europeans in South America, they were surprised. Why is it that the fields are so green, so healthy? They found out na yung mga natives doon sa South America were using guano as their fertilizer.
Where's
Wala
guano coming from?
araw yun.
Where's that coming from?
I read it somewhere. Basta one European, I think it was the Spaniards, they found out that
Saan ang sourcing ng guano?
ang guano from the caves. Guano is actually yung dumi ng vat.
Oh.
So if you go to the caves, maraming mga paniki diyan, mga vats, no?
Yeah.
Yung dumi nila, yun yung guano.
Oh my goodness. So we still have to gather that. But you were mentioning the
But
methodology.
now there are substitutes, like for example, rock phosphate.
Yeah.
Rock phosphate, very abundant yan sa earth. The number one, 80% of the rock phosphate is in Morocco. But it's available in China, in the US, actually it's in Florida. Ang ginagawa nila yung mga swamps doon, maraming rock phosphate doon. So that's an issue in the US now, environmental issue.
Is there nothing native to us that we can use this as a substitute instead of importing again all of these ingredients for our productivity?
We don't have massive deposit of rock phosphate in the Philippines.
But there could be other, yeah.
To be honest with you, rock phosphate here costs around 30 pesos per kilo. If you import it, it's only around 10 pesos per kilo. So, saan ka bibili? If you're a businessman, you want to be a hero, buy from the Philippines. If you want to be a businessman, import it.
Oh my goodness. So here we are. You were mentioning something about the new methods, the alternatives, etc. Now it's a different kind of science that we have to incorporate in our agricultural program. Pero, nasa ng programa natin dyan? President has announced so many of this already in the past. Marami na siyang nabanggit na gagawin. In fact, he held the Department of Agriculture until about a few months ago. So he already is, he knows all of this. In other words, every time he meets with the people in the agricultural sector, private and all of the other government agencies, alam na niya lahat yan. So yan ang mga programa niya. Bakit parang hirap pa rin tayo somehow?
Well, probably they have a different approach. Probably they have a different approach. Like, we still have to wait for the program of the new secretary as far as agriculture is concerned, like rice, corn, probably even Because we're also importing fish, no? So how are we going to grow fish? Di ba?
Aquaculture.
Antayin
Yeah,
natin.
he's
Let's
supposed
give
to
him
be
a
the,
chance. Kasi bago pa siya eh.
At saka ano siya, his expertise is actually in fisheries. That was his private business for the longest time. Be
Well,
that as it,
for that matter, Rita, I think kailangan naman talaga natin dyan is somebody who can manage it. And maganda naman yung credentials niya because napalaki nila yung corporation niya. So, let's give him a chance.
yeah, he's been there only for a couple of months. When we say, for instance, that there are new methods, nagpapalit ng whoever will be managing it, etc., there is still so much to be desired, Butch, because yan na nga, yung isang word dyan sa ating programa is prayers. Kasama ng lahat na yan, kailangan magdasal pa tayo na talagang bilis-bilisan, ayusin, etc. And the president means well, you know. He has, my goodness, I have not seen a president like him who holds cabinet meetings and cluster meetings almost on a daily basis. It's just about every day. He meets with a lot of his so-called finance managers and sa agriculture, lahat na yan, sa trade and industry, sa finance, lahat na ito. And he has made a lot of pronouncements regarding this. But there is something that will still have to make it move a little faster.
Well, I think, alam mo naman, it should be a team effort, no? The cabinet secretaries should also think out of the box. It should not be business as usual because business as usual, ilang taon na, ilang dekada na, ganun pa rin. So you really have to think out of the box. You have to introduce new innovations in energy, in agriculture, in fisheries, and even like for example, yung ating meat products, we are also importing pork, we're importing what do you call this, beef,
Okay, yeah.
chicken, we're importing that. Why? Because our feeds are very high. So again, they are at a loss how to lower down the cost of feeds.
Plus all the other ingredients that go into agricultural productivity. It's you know, we are supposedly an agricultural country, and agriculture and industry should go hand in hand. But our industry is on a different pathway. Iba ang palakad ng industry natin, iba rin ang palakad ng ating agriculture. The other day, for instance, Butch, we saw pictures of tomatoes being laid out on the road kasi oversupply. Some time back we could produce ketchup from tomatoes or some other ingredient coming from tomatoes when there's a surplus, but here you have again over harvest, hindi alam ang gagawin. So the connection between agriculture and industrialization connected to productivity, parang there needs to be, as you said, better coordination and a faster movement.
Teamwork, that's what I've been saying, teamwork. So like for example, between the Department of Agriculture and DTI, there should really be a strong teamwork because dito sa DTI, ilan lang yung ating mga MSMEs, kukonti lang, and we are not really giving them full support. They say that the MSMEs are the backbone of economy. Pero in other countries like in Korea, 90% are MSMEs. But yet they have giant companies like Hyundai, Samsung, Hanjin. These are huge companies, big companies, no? Korean Air. Tayo, ilan lang yung ating malalaking kompanya. And our MSMEs constitute only around 35%. Ang layo pa.
Yeah, but they're actually the backbone of our informal economy, so to speak. Kahit na maliit na yung kinikita nila, pero yan talaga yung tinatawag ang informal economy natin na nagpapalakad. Yung mga,
totoo nga yan. But there is not enough support. Like for example, you give an example of tomato rotting. But maraming gumagawa dyan ng tomato paste. But they don't have enough capital. So maraming may mga technology sa MSMEs, they don't have enough capital. You know, like for example, ang DTI, hindi ka papautangin unless yung company mo have existed for 3 years. So kung nagsisimula ka pa, there is no financing. In Bangladesh, Bangladesh used to have a very low very low what do you mean cost of
Production?
Yung Bangladesh had the lowest salary in between Pakistan and India. So what did they do? They came out with a policy that if you are 5 and then you want to start a business, Bangladesh government will finance you. All you have to do is band yourself together. Dito sa ating bansa, there is no teamwork dahil may livelihood ang DSWD, may livelihood program yung ating Department of Labor. Ba't hindi na lang natin pag-isahin yan? And then develop stronger MSMEs.
No, but for instance, like there is one department where you have that connected, trade and industry. Diba? So that is where the connection should come in also when you speak of not just MSMEs, but also on the agricultural side, para merong hand-in-hand yan na
Exactly. Kaya nga, kailangan dagdagan natin yung pondo ng DTI for the MSMEs, to finance the MSMEs so they can buy more equipment. Actually, nagpapautang ng equipment, BUST. So, wow. Too complicated, no? There should be a one-stop shop, no? So like, for example, 3 years ka na, medyo successful na yung negosyo mo, gusto mong umutang, you go to DUST. DUST will lend you. Diba? Dapat, yung mga equipment, mag-recommend lang yung DUST. Dito na rin yan sa DTI. DTI na magpapautang sa iyo. So, yan ang nangyayari sa atin ngayon. Minsan, may mga like for example kahapon yung guest ko sa show was actually manufacturing fantastic chocolate bars and chocolate nibs. Pero minsan daw kinukulang siya ng kakao. So dapat that is where the Department of Agriculture should come in through BPI because BPI is in charge of high value crops. Pero magkano ang budget ng BPI? 1.9 billion. It's not enough to buy seedlings, you know, and distribute it to the farmers.
Now that you mentioned,
yeah. In other words, what we have to do is identify natin. Okay, may livelihood ka, may livelihood funding ka, and then may livelihood from. So many departments, may mga livelihood we pull it together. Yung livelihood programs na yan. And then, titingnan natin ngayon yung mga nag-start up na talagang makikita natin may viable kaysa puro ayuda lang tayo ng ayuda. Diba? Ito naman ay hindi mawawala dahil babayaran nila eh. Kung mawala man yon, din ayuda. Diba? Naging ayuda na yon. So, we really have to focus. Hindi yung itong department may livelihood, itong department may livelihood, ito may livelihood. Hindi maganda yan.
But you were leading on to that, Butch. You mentioned something about the allocations done sa national budget. The General Appropriations Act is supposed to take care precisely para hindi magkaroon ng sinasabi mga duplication of one department with the other, etc. Or magkakaroon ng one-stop shop. Pero ang budget natin increases every year. Di ba? Imagine.
Exactly. But alam mo, napakalaki ng disparity. Like for example, Department of Agriculture, 1.9 billion. Yung number one problem is food inflation.
Exactly.
Sa Public Works and Highways, 890 billion.
Sino bang kakain ng kalsada, Tulay?
Sabi ko nga, kahit tanggalin mo muna yung construction ng kalsada at tulay, tapusin lang muna nyo yung mga ongoing, but all the rest, don't start anything new. We can still exist and our economy will even bloom.
So that's what I was leading on to. The allocations we have in the budget, prioritizing the programs that President Junior already had announced so many times. Every time there is a cabinet meeting, sinasabi niya ito ang priority, ito yung mga programa, etc. But every time that the budget comes out, like now he just signed the General Appropriations Act, Although sinabi nga that there were certain provisions that he vetoed. We don't even know what those provisions are. Hindi naman kinuwento na yon. Pero sa allocation nga, you saw that you just mentioned that disparity between the Department of Public Works and the Department of Agriculture, where there should be more emphasis given to agriculture kasi yung talagang mas mahalaga.
Totoo yan. Agriculture and then Department of Health. And then
Department of Health, Education.
Then education.
Oo.
I hope in the Department of Education na talagang magamit din yung pera wisely, not intelligently, but wisely.
Wisdom already requires a lot of experience for...
Siyempre may problema tayo sa West Philippines is probably we have to strengthen our Department of National Defense, yung armed forces natin. Strengthen natin. Perhaps we have to acquire more bigger Coast Guard vessels para wag na lang tayo magkanyunan ng tubig, magbanggaan na lang tayo. Kagaya ng bomb car.
You know, when they were showing the video of where this near clash was supposed to happen, makikita mo ang liliit ng mga ating mga sasakyan, ang laki-laki ng barko ng China, ang laki-laki naman ng dagat. Butch, bakit kung meron silang pupuntahan, doon sila tatabi, doon sa malaking barko? Pwede naman sila lumayo ng konti para hindi sila...
mabagal kasi sila. Sila ang tinatabihan ng malaking barko.
Hindi naman
at mabibilis yung malalaking barko ng China, kaya nahahabol sila.
Hindi na nga sila hinahabol eh. Nakita mo yung video doon, di ba? Mas mabilis yung maliliit. Pero sabi ko nga, sa laki ng dagat, doon sila tumatabi sa malaki. Anyway, that's not just the clashing of water cannons, etc. That's another topic altogether. You know, we have here...
That's what we're trying to emphasize here is dapat yung budget natin for defense ay medyo dagdagan.
But that is kahit na dagdagan yan, it will not be sufficient to face China.
It's not, but at least may mga deterrents yan. At tingnan mo naman yung Russia. Who would think that hanggang ngayon may gera pa between Russia and Ukraine? Ukraine is a small country. We have a bigger population.
And Ukraine is also was already given away by Russia during the time of Gorbachev. It's one of the 15 satellite nations that was given their independence. And the reason in Ukraine is the laban of a minority group that wants to enter kasi ayaw naman ni Putin papasukin sa Russia yung grupo na yon na nanggagaling sa Ukraine. It's on the surface you would think it's just Russia and Ukraine. No, there is another group there. Para ba yung nangyayari sa Basque, for instance, sa Spain.
But whatever it is, Rita, magkakaroon naman ng deterrent talaga. I just gave it as an example na hindi basta-basta ganoon kadali. Ito, sila talagang magkapit-bahay lang. Ito, meron tayong dagat yan na dadaanan nila. So, medyo mas mahirap tayong i-invade kaysa Ukraine. Ang Ukraine mas madaling i-invade.
Of course, yung invasion na yan, if we really go back to history, I still believe that China is not an invasive kind of a country. Whatever it is, nasabi na nga na kailangan pag-usapan. You see, the private sector has already come in. This is the first time that we hear, the billionaire lady coming out and cautioning the government to not to be too antagonistic. China is our neighbor and one of the largest trading partners we have. You yourself has mentioned, pumunta ka sa Divisoria, punta ka sa Quiapo, punta ka lahat yan made in China. In America itself, halos everything is also made in China.
True. In fact, we import around $30 billion a year from China.
Yeah, reaching 40 na nga.
Kailangan hinay-hinay. But anyway, I was just trying to emphasize that we have to increase also the budget in the Department of Defense, National Defense, sa armed forces natin. Kailangan mag-modernize din tayo.
How modern should we go anyway? Because just a few minutes before our program, I heard the Secretary of Defense saying that maglalagay tayo ng mga radar pero hindi natin sasabihin sa kanila kung saan tayo maglalagay. I almost burped because with all the modern technology now, kahit ilagay mo yung mga radar na sa ilalim ng dagat, malalaman talaga kung nasaan sila. So anyway.
Alam mo, Rita, for that matter, all you have to do is subscribe sa Google Map and makikita mo kung ano yung movement ng ships nila. You don't need a radar.
Exactly.
You don't need a radar. You don't need a radar. All you need is to subscribe sa Google Earth, yung $400 a year. Then makikita mo live kung ano yung mga activities nila doon sa dagat. And lahat naman ng vessel ngayon may mga beacon yan na matidetect mo kung saan yung vessel na yan.
That's
But
true. And
with that, as it may, alam mo, yung mga radars na yan, magkano pa yan? Sobrang mahal pa yan. But if you just subscribe $400 a year, okay na, makikita na natin yun.
we have somebody here sending a message to us from Tokyo saying that it would be best for us to just stay neutral, and that would be safer for us. I think that is also a very good suggestion because one time way back in the 1950s, we had the Bandung Conference, all of these countries getting together in the region. Wala pang ASEAN nun, but there was already this move to have this region as a region of neutrality, neutral states, para hindi nakikiling kung saan-saan. But then, of course, might is right, as they say. So the big hegemons would want to show that they have the power over the waters so that they can control the world or something to that effect. But now, ikaw na rin nagsabi na napaka-iba na ang takbo ng panahon. And here we have a neighbor like China, which is really just mercantile. Merchants. They're, talagang yun ang kanilang forte. From the beginning of time, yan na yan. We should capitalize on that, the fact that it's better to just trade and engage in business activities rather than water cannons and all of this, So
And Rita, if we really use our common sense, matagal na nilang gustong kunin yung Taiwan. And yet, bakit hindi nila magawa? Di ba? Mas mahirap kunin yung Pilipinas kung talagang yun ang purpose ng Chinese. At kung gusto naman talaga nila yung Pilipinas, unahin na nila muna yung Taiwan. And yet, for so many years...
No, they're also in business with Taiwan. I mean,
No. What I'm saying ba, if people in our country, they have that fear na baka invade tayo ng China, let us not abuse ourselves. Hindi tayo kukunin ng China kasi yung Taiwan nga na probinsya nila, hindi nila kinukuha, hindi nila nakukuha. Tayo pa kaya na meron tayong mutual defense treaty with the UN.
Hindi na nila kailangan kunin pa yon kasi ang galing nilang pumasok ng negosyo dyan, however else you would look at it, many of our big Chinese businessmen here are also, doing business with Taiwan and with mainland China. So,
that's true.
Yeah.
But I think halos pareho lang tayo ng business transaction with Taiwan. 30 billion US dollars tayo, probably sila mga 40 billion US dollars, but or even less because Taiwan also manufactures their own products. Like for example, pag-usapan natin yung mga motherboard. Ang sikat na motherboard hindi Chinese eh. Yung motherboard sa desktop. Ang mga sikat are Taiwanese.
Yes,
MCI,
lahat
Gigabyte, Acer. So ito yung mga sikat. And they're exporting a lot of that, yan ang ginagamit ng Dell, yan ang ginagamit ng even Macintosh. Yan yung mga gamit na yan. So I think we are getting more from China than Taiwan getting from China. Taiwan export to China.
Yeah, exactly. So hindi na kailangan man invasion doon. The invasion word is coming from another hegemon to be able to push its interests also in the region. Nabanggit nila yan. They have a Freudian slip somewhere, even with their president, saying that Asia is now the pivot of the world. Ano pa ba yan? Dito na yung interest nila. Bakit nga? Natapos na sila sa mga ibang lugar, dito kailangan na magkaroon ng konting activity, and that's exactly what they're trying to prove. not realizing that in the period of about 3 decades, naging economic superpower na ito next to the big hegemon actually. And now what's happening? Nagko-collapse na lahat ng mga ibang economies. And China has just been able to elevate its 30 million poverty-stricken province into a status of being middle class and upper middle class. My goodness, in 3 decades. In 3 decades, nasaan tayo? Di ba? Look what happened. Umatras na tayo from what? From 1986 to today. So that is the situation we're at. We have, yeah.
After World War II, we were the second biggest economy in Asia.
So where are we now?
I think we've been overtaken by Vietnam. We've been overtaken by Taiwan.
Exactly.
Overtaken by Thailand.
Yes.
Overtaken by Indonesia.
Many of the countries of these countries are also doing business with China. All of this. Anyway, that's the irony of it all. We have a Secretary of Foreign Affairs whose mother actually is the one espousing many aspects that we should follow as far as the South China Sea is concerned, and the son, who's the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, is on the other side of the world.
That is normal, Rita. That is normal. He doesn't have to follow his mother. He wants to prove that he has his own mind. So they have different perspectives.
For what purpose would that serve?
During the time of her mother, wala naman yung problema ng West Philippine Seas.
Yeah.
But now there is that problem. So you have to rethink your position and foreign policy.
Be that as it may, that's the way propaganda moves also. And so we're back here to the home ground. We have perceptions, meaning to say the reality that we are facing is no longer part of the reality that we perceived early on. We have programs that are being pronounced in just about all the speeches of our president, in all of the cluster meetings that he has, in the different travels that he has undertaken abroad, enticing foreign investors to come in, and already announcing all of the amounts that are expected to come to the Philippines. Again, here we are, Department of Finance, Department of Trade and Industry, lahat yan, which are supposed to already have the highway that will enter, that will be used by these foreign investments into our country. And then at the end of this all, we put our hands together and pray na on this third year of his administration, all of this would finally come into reality.
Let's put it this way, you cannot just make changes overnight. It takes time. But there are certain cabinet secretaries who probably cannot hear the president. When the president speaks, you have to take notes. And in your department, kung may policy statement yung ating Pangulo, you have to do it right away.
They listen but do not hear.
But I think some of the cabinet secretaries are not that sensitive. Hindi basta-basta nila tinitake it seriously. That should not be the case because the president has good intentions.
Yes, very much so.
So kailangan ng ating ang problema kasi minsan ang nilalagay natin yung mga academe. Yung mga academe walang experience yan. They're not street smart. Ang kailangan mo sa cabinet ngayon ay mga street smart, hindi mga academe na yung mga I'm the top notcher of the bar, I've been a top notcher in all those exams. It's not enough because there is no substitute to experience.
Yeah, very true. That's exactly what we are trying to drive at. Time was when you had a presidential management staff that did the synchronization of all of these executive offices so that when they present something to the president, nakikita yung teamwork. You mentioned that word, teamwork. I remember his father, pag upo na sa cabinet meeting, the first thing, anong problema? So immediately you go straight to what problems do you have? Well, as you said, they listen but they do not hear.
Yes.
So there is really something between their ears that should function the way it should function. Diba?
Exactly, exactly. But if they cannot hear, they should be replaced because we don't have the luxury of time. We don't have
Well,
the luxury of time.
some of them have
The
had,
president promised our people that rice will be at 20 pesos. It's now at 60 pesos. And the Secretary of Agriculture should do something. Kaya siguro pinalitan yung mga, hindi naman pinalitan, nag-appoint na siya, somebody from the business sector, because he believes that Secretary Laurel can manage the Department of Agriculture well.
yeah.
And
Yeah, so,
I hope he can come out with pronouncement because the people are still hopeful. They're very
exactly.
hopeful na bababa yung presyo ng bigas.
Yeah. And every time the president speaks, yun naman talagang sinasabi niya, talagang nilalakad natin na makaabot tayo doon. So there is that that avenue of hope that always there are things that are being done which may not have been communicated to the people effectively, so that we do not worry because the president is on top of it all. Yun ang mahalaga doon. And he is actually. The way he answers questions from media and all of this. Nabanggit nga yung members of the cabinet. Like for instance, sa NEDA, Balisacan has been there even prior, in ancient times, andyan na siya. And during his time, when he was younger, yung kinikwento mo nga na kailangan alam na kung ano yung high variety products na pwedeng itanim, NEDA came up with, some kind of an atlas for province where they had the profile of what is in every province, as a matter of fact, preparatory to regionalizing. Wala pa yung mga division and regions. So alam kung anong klaseng soil, kung ilan ang forest, kung ilan ang ilog, kung ilan ang volcano even, baka pwedeng geothermal even at the time. Lahat na yan. Alam ni Balisacan yan eh. So as you said, kung may
So may roadmap na pala si Balisacan. Even before.
Nun. Yeah, I remember during, before, they already had that. NEDA already had per province the profile of the kind of soil, what kind of plants and seeds you can plant there, rivers, mountains, lakes, even part of ecology was there. Wala pa itong concern about climate change, pero meron na yung mga like recently lang nila nilabas yung mapping ng geodetic mapping kung saan merong dadaan ng earthquake. Recently lang nilabas yon. But Balisacan in the NEDA already had that, yung fault line. You see, all of that was already there. Yun, pwede nilang gamitin. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just
So
a matter.
again pala, meron na, dapat trabaho naman talaga ng Department of Agriculture, hindi trabaho ng NEDA.
Pero andun na.
Kung walang ginagawa yung Department of, kasi like for example, kung tatanungin mo sila, what is the inventory of sibuyas? They don't know eh. Anong inventory ng rice? They don't know. In fact, if you have to gather information, yung data, pumunta ka sa US Department of Agriculture, makakakuha ka. Makukuha mo ilan ang ini-import ng Philippines na rice, ilan ang i-import ng Philippines na onion, anong production ng Pilipinas. Nandoon lahat sa US Department of Agriculture.
Sayang, kasi meron na tayong ganyan noon. I remember that was a thick book, malaki yung page, tapos doon nakalagay na talaga per province. Lahat yung mga... nagulat nga ako because 81 provinces, every province pala has a volcano somewhere. Diba? So lahat yun, na chart na as a matter of fact. So it's just a matter of updating it and finding out if there are still other areas. Because there are also complaints about supposedly agricultural land which are being converted to something else, for factories, housing, etc., and all of that. So even land use,
alam mo, it's a pity because like coffee, we used to produce our own coffee.
And very good coffee.
90% of our demand is imported.
Yeah.
And here's Vietnam. Vietnam is exporting $2.4 billion of coffee.
Imagine that. Cacao also.
We are importing cacao.
Yeah, can you imagine? And all of the Swiss chocolates, Belgian chocolates, they get their cacao from elsewhere, and we could easily supply them that anyway. Nako, Ang dami nitong kailangan. Would you like to sit in the cabinet, Butch, somewhere? Not in any department, but some kind of a, like in an orchestra, may conductor, di ba? So that,
Pwede tayong maging Rasputin.
You have to have
Advise the president. But definitely, yes. We really have to rationalize the budgeting.
Yeah.
Ayan ang importante. Alam mo, mga negosyante tinitingnan kasi yung national budget. Ako naman, titingnan ko yung national budget. Sabihin ko, business as usual, to walang mangyayari. Makikita mo naman kung may mangyayari if there is a drastic change in the GAA na pipirmahan ng ating Pangulo. Ang problema lang kasi, yung ating Secretary of Budget, simple lang, either dagdagan o babaan, plus or minus 10% lang yung budget.
She goes with the figures, simply the figures. But then, you're the person who can relate the numbers and the figures sa tao. You can relate exactly the way you're computing it. I just saw one of your products and already you knew that this kind of a product will sell this much. Kinompute mo na kaagad. If I produce 10 bottles, 20 bottles, 100, magkano na? You reduce the figures, the mathematical figures into the numbers and the beneficiaries of that particular product. I think that's what ought to be done, Go back.
Kung titingnan mo yung budget din natin, Rita, ang daming ayuda yan. Ayuda is just an expense. Instead of converting the expense into investment, like supporting the MSMEs, malaking bagay yan sa pag-uunlad ng ating ekonomiya. Like for example, Department of Tourism, kukunti ang infrastructure nila. Why? Yung infrastructure ng Department of Tourism ay nanggagaling sa CHESA, used to be PTA, Philippine Tourism Authority. Every time babiyahe kasi ating mga kababayan, may travel tax yan. Ang revenue ng CHESA ngayon, used to be PTA, ay umaabot ng 5 billion. Pero yung 5 billion na yon, binawasan pa ng Congress yung kalahati na pupunta sa CHED. So ang kalahati, yun na lang yung infrastructure. And the fastest way for an economic growth is to strengthen and develop and promote tourism. Yan ang pinakamabilis. Look at Portugal. Portugal is the poorest country in Europe. Pero there are every year around 30 million tourists goes to Portugal, spending at least $2,000 US per person per pax. Yeah. So ang laking pumapasok na pera sa Portugal.
Exactly. And
dito sa atin, sabihin natin, we have 7 million tourists, pero 2 million of that are balikbayans.
Exactly.
Hindi talaga tourist yun. So if we can attract at least 30 million tourists in our country, ang laking bagay yun. Alam mo, Hong Kong napakaliit. They attract around 40 million tourists a year.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, so that's how it goes. We have barely 2 minutes to go, but there are many other things that we can discuss. Perceptions which become reality, programs which are pronounced almost on a daily basis, and then of course, prayers that all of this will succeed. And we really offer this for the benefit of the president, who really means well. I've always said this, Butch, because many of us come out with expectations and frustrations and so forth, but we have to understand the seat of power is just one seat. Siya lang talaga ang nakaupo doon. Siya lang nakakaalam kung anong mga nakikita niya, kung anong nire-report sa kanya. Let's give him that particular prerogative to be able to decide many things that are there on his table. And he does well.
Let us support him.
Yeah, exactly. He does well by
your
that.
program actually is one program that can definitely help him with your opinions and ideas, with your the ideas and opinions of your guests can actually help him. Like for example, perceptions. Sometimes it turns into illusion. Programs. Sometimes the programs are not the right programs. Yeah. Prayer, sometimes people, they just pray, they don't work. Because they say, we leave it all to God.
Okay. So that's our program. And we will continue with this, as we've said, because we will take track of what's happening not only in the office of the president, but also to our country. Thank you very much, Butch, for having joined us. You will be with us again and again and again. Of course, as we said, we hope the president and the offices that are important will listen also to you. Thank you so much for joining us. And to all of those all over the world, maraming salamat po. This is Rita Gadi for the Chronicles.
Thank you, Rita, and Merry Christmas to all.
Merry Christmas too.